We've had over 200 mass shootings this year, and today is only the 150th day of the year. So is this a crime problem or a gun problem? One half of the country will tell you it's one thing, while the other half will tell you it's something entirely different. Facts, however, are still facts. Gun violence and mass shootings are not only up, but they are officially now the number one killer amongst young people. Some will argue it's number two behind fentanyl, but does that really change the argument? One thing for sure is that this country loves to direct its outrage towards insignificant things and places all the time, except where it's needed the most. Those who have the possibility of making real change send thoughts and prayers rather than concessions and changes to the public at large. I'm saying nothing new, but if it's a crime problem, then maybe we should dissect cause and effect. For example, what is the effect of a society who supports hypermasculinity? Or the subtraction of social programs because it's a waste of taxpayer money? Or lobbying against social emotional curriculum because teachers need to stick to traditional school subjects? What is the cause and effect for having less tolerance for the LGBTQ community? Make no mistakes about it, these causes have fatal effects. What if it's a gun problem? Is it a problem to have over 400 million guns in circulation in a country that only has 330 million people? Is it a problem that 1 out of every 20 guns is that of an automatic weapon? And if we have 6 citizens, why do we provide such easy access to a dangerous weapon? Why does this country not have a federal law requiring safe storage of weapons or a standard for safety locks? Just by saying automatic rifle triggers people to get defensive because 80% of weapons and mass shootings are done with handguns. And that's true. But maybe that's the point. I, too, am a fan of the Second Amendment, and my attack on AR rifles rather than handguns shows that I'm looking for common ground to go along with our common sense. All in all, I think it's imperative that those that make decisions have to come out and really just say that they don't care about these alarming statistics. Because until it hits them in the green, I can promise you there will be plenty of red. Bobby talks. Always more to the story. Welcome, everyone, to Bobby Talks, ... Those dots are there to tell you that there's always more to the story. And today's story, well, it's a big one. It's the conversation that seems to be happening every single day here in America. It's the conversation about American youth and whether or not we really give a damn. It's the conversation on gun control. It's the conversation about what we're supposed to do with our communities and how we can help people with their mental health. And it's the conversation about whether or not your Second Amendment really does give you the right to carry those AR rifles and those types of weaponry. Today, I'm going to be sitting down with Byron Goggin. He is a 13-time Emmy award-winning director of photography. He is basically somebody who has done it all. He's worked with Discovery Channel, National Geographic, Fox. He's worked with I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch here because I've read your resume, and it continues on. You worked in sports. This gentleman I'm bringing on the show because right now he is also taking his chance on the director world, and he has made a documentary called Kiss the Babies. And this is something that I've seen firsthand. I was a judge in the Adrian Film Festival, which he was a participant in. And this is something that hits home to a lot of people. And it's a conversation that needs to be had. Byron, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I noticed in your intro there, you said we were going to have a conversation about gun control. No, we're not.
No, we're not. Not an area you want to touch on, or is it you don't think it's the reason to talk?
I don't feel like, well, first of all, we'll get to that.
Sure.
To that. I mean, what I'm talking about is like, we're having this conversation. I'm sure the whole reason you're reaching out to me is about this documentary that I did. It's called Kiss the Babies, and it's about youth gun violence. And as of last year, guns kill more children than anything combined. More than car accidents, more than, health issues, more than anything else.
Drug use, fentanyl is a big one.
Than anything. And that's a pretty startling statistic. And, this documentary that I'm working on, it wasn't started by me. It was started by somebody else, but they brought it to me because they knew of my background and they thought that I might be able to help the whole thing out. And So I was the editor on it, and I pretty much story produced the whole thing. There's a gentleman, Charlie LaDuff, one of the smartest reporter journalism's people that I know. He works at used to work at Fox 2 in Detroit, and was a Pulitzer Prize winner writer for the New York Times, and he's been all over. And he's the one who did all the reporting and the thing, and he kind of handed me all the pieces and said, "Here you go," and and then we put it together. And trying to put the thing together, it's a very difficult thing to do. I'm trying not to talk too much, but it's kind of the introduction to it, and
Yeah,
how I
no,
got
keep
into
going.
it.
Yeah.
But like, it's a really difficult thing to broach. It's hard to talk about kids being killed, right? And this is a topic where it's clearly sides. There's no one who really, I feel like, who's in the middle on it. I don't want to say no one. There's no such thing as no one, right? But clearly it's a very divisive topic. And you have people who own guns, and they want to keep their guns, and they want to be able to keep the rights to their guns. And I understand that. I grew up in the Upper Peninsula. I had a gun in my hand from the time I was a little boy, was out hunting with my dad by the time I was 11, had hunter safety classes. And even in my school up there, we had hunter safety where they had pellet guns in the schools, right? So if somebody expects a conversation for me to be anti-gun, that's not going to happen, because I own a bunch of guns. But I look at it like I'm a responsible gun owner, right? I keep my stuff locked up, and I believe that there are some laws that we can move forward that don't infringe on the Second Amendment, that could help things, right? And then you have the other side, and I understand the other side too. There's people, whose children have been killed. I mean, the numbers are crazy. Gun deaths have increased by 50% from 2019 to 2021 amongst children and teens. 50%, like, that's startling. And homicide was the largest category of it. Gun deaths in 2021 were 60%. And this is among kids under the age of 18. So I don't know if I have the number right in front of me, but thousands of children are being killed. I think the number is like one every 10 minutes, every minute or every hour of the day, one every 10 minutes are being killed. So it's hard to go through life without knowing, or we're getting to the point, go through life without knowing somebody who has been affected by gun violence, right? Or a child has died. And I understand, like, changes need to be made, things need to be done. So when approaching this documentary, I had to go into it with the thought that I'm never going to make one side happy. I'm never going to make the other side happy. And that's not my job, to make anyone happy. My job is to inform people and show them what the cause of the whole thing is. Because in my belief, guns aren't the cause of child gun violence, right? And children being killed. The cause is all the societal issues that wrap itself around it. The gun is just the tool. And I'll stop there because I've been rambling.
Ramble away, sir. Ramble away. No, Byron. So just a couple things I wanted to touch on that you mentioned. I specifically wanted you to be on the show because you do own guns, that you have had a history, a child growing up basically with a gun in your hand, like you said, in a responsible fashion. I didn't really want to have somebody on who kind of looked at the scope narrowly and only had their agenda to sell. Thing that I was most impressed about when I watched Kiss the Babies is, indeed, it stick to the narrative. The narrative is about what is happening inside these communities that are forced, or that are I don't want to say forcing, but that are leading our youth to make such drastic decisions. Now, they do have access to the tools. And in this case, and that's where the conversation picks up for one side of the argument is, okay, well, there's always been a history of young adolescents who have anger or rage problems, but they didn't have access to the tools as much as they do now. That's one side. Now, the other side would say that there is, anybody that has anger or rage, or is looking for a way out, they can do harm or damage with any tool you give them. So there's a conversation to be had on both sides. And I do want to have that conversation because I, like yourself, I don't own a gun, particularly myself, but I'm not against it. Like I wouldn't not own a gun. If I had my own place, a castle law, things of that nature, like I would, to defend myself, I would do that. Not a hunter, not a big, I guess that's not one of my hobbies, but every single one of my friends does hunt. They do have that as a passion of theirs. So it's I'm not too far removed from it myself. So that's why I wanted to bring you onto the show specifically. Your documentary, Kiss the Babies, and working with Charlie, and we talked a little bit about Charlie. Just a side note real quick. Charlie's not with 2 no more. Where's he at? What's he doing?
So he has a podcast. It's called the No Bullshit News Hour.
I'm not surprised.
And he tackles politics. And the thing that I love about Charlie and Charlie's show is he doesn't take sides.
Yeah.
And I love that. I used to work in news. I worked for NBC. I worked for CNN a little bit, worked for Fox. So I've been all over the map with it. I know how it all goes, and I've watched it change over the years. I'm also one who doesn't believe in fake news. I believe in slanted news. It's really easy to take a story and pluck what you want from it and go this way with it, or pluck what you want from it and go that way with it. Still true. You're just not telling the whole story. I believe in that, you know. Great thing about Charlie and Charlie's podcast, No Bullshit News Hour, is it's no bullshit. Like if somebody's doing something wrong in politics, it doesn't matter whether you're right or whether you're left. He's coming at you hard and strong no matter what. He just wants change and he wants it right. And I respect that and appreciate it. So, and because he has that mental attitude and he approaches stories like that, it was a pleasure to be able to work on this show, because I was able to, edit it in such a way where it didn't, like you'll notice, I mean, you judge the film. Nowhere does it talk about the Second Amendment rights. Nowhere does it talk about, specific political agendas, right? Other than, people, politicians are taking money and misappropriating it instead of spending money in neighborhoods where it needs to be spent. They're doing other things with it, but there's no politics. And that was kind of the way that we wanted to work the movie from the beginning, we wanted the movie to be able to start a conversation, right? And if you're appealing to one side, you're just preaching to one side. And if you go to the other side, you're just preaching to that side. And really, the only way that this problem is going to get fixed is for people to meet in the middle, right? And in my estimation, I haven't seen another film that really just takes the middle politically like that. So people are asking, so what's the movie about? The movie is about the societal issues that surround the kids that drive them there, right? It's about the socioeconomic situations. When people have nothing, what do? Right? They're scared, they rob, they do things. Kids, the way it's a status thing to have a gun. Kids have guns because everybody else has a gun. They don't want to get caught without one. They don't trust the police. They don't trust the politicians who are saying that they're going to do and help them there. They don't trust anybody. The court system is not working. Most of the cases go unsolved, and we have examples of that. And the whole movie kind of takes you through this one step to the next of how we got to this place where this is. And that's kind of how the movie works.
So that's where I kind of want to ask you then, because I definitely think people should check out this movie, obviously, just so that they can, if they're not familiar with it, which at this point, I don't know how anybody couldn't be familiar with the conversation on the number one killer of youth in this country. I wanted to ask you that specifically to start is, do you think, and I hope this comes off as respectful, Byron, I don't want this to come off as disrespectful, but do you think that the timing of this particular documentary is a little maybe a little delayed or a little too late to have this conversation, because I feel like the conversation is already happening. And now we're kind of past the point of like, hey, this is happening. These are the facts. This is taking place in America. Now it's whether or not, what are we going to do about it? Do you think there's a truth to that? Or do you think there's enough people that maybe that are in the middle that just don't know the information, don't know the facts, that this still has a place at the table right now?
So, well, here's the simple answer to the question. The documentary was started almost 2.5 years ago.
I
It
figured.
took that long to put it together because things are constantly changing, and we were waiting for court cases to begin and end, and and follow some stories, because we followed 3 separate stories of children who were shot and how their lives are affected to this day, and we followed some people, some witnesses, and some different things. So it's not something that got thrown together in a few weeks. It's not like, oh, we should do, now that all these school shootings are happening, or whatever, let's put this together. Which, by the way, this movie isn't so much about school shootings.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole separate thing. I mean, there's so many parts of this issue that need to be tackled. School shootings are a completely different thing than shootings down in, the inner cities, and so there, there's so many different things that come into it. So to answer your question, yeah, it could have come out a little sooner, but like at the same time, I think it's perfect timing, because people are talking about it, but nothing is getting done. Nothing is getting done. Nothing. I take that back. Governor Whitmer, just like last month, passed a couple bills, which I don't have a problem with. The bills were, I could pull it up on the internet and read it to you, but essentially it's like, if you're in a household and there's children, or you're expecting children to come over, you better have trigger locks on your gun. What's wrong with that? Like, that doesn't interfere with anybody's Second Amendment right. That's just protecting the kids in your house, right? Because the number is astoundingly high. It's like 9% or something of kids just get into their parents' guns and shoot themselves. And there was a statistic, I got some of it written down. It's like 80% of mass shootings at K through 12 schools came from stolen guns from family members.
Right.
So if there's trigger locks on guns, go ahead, steal the gun. So what? You can't pull the trigger, right? So, and I have friends who were against that. And I'm like, I don't understand why you would be against that. That's about as common sense as it gets, and it doesn't infringe on anybody's rights.
Well,
And the
okay,
other one
that's
was
where,
background checks. And I don't have a problem with background checks either, of course. But when gun advocates, the far right, who really are entrenched in that, I just feel like so many times they just want to fight everything. If it's a law against guns, they just automatically have to fight it. And their
right.
mantra is, they're coming to get our guns. And my answer to that, whenever I have that debate, is, all right, let's talk about that. How would that work? So they come to your neighborhood, and they start at the first house, and they got, a group of police or military, and they knock on the first door, and they're like, surrender your guns, right? Well, by the time they got to the third house, the whole neighborhood would know. And by the time they got to the sixth house, there'd be shooting involved, right?
Right.
Much less trying to do it through the whole country. So don't give me that. Like, nobody's like really truly coming for your guns. That's not even possible. It's not even, and I'll get people who will argue with me about it, but it's like, really, show me how that would work.
Right.
But I don't believe that they should take away the rights that people have currently with their guns. I just think that people should be safer with their guns, right?
Do you believe in the type of gun? The
Well,
type of guns that
there's
are
statistics
manufactured
on
in this
that too, and
country?
I'm not a statistics guy at all. But in
Yeah.
this case, statistics really work. So if you think about it, guns used in crimes, and this is a 2021 statistic. They don't have it updated in 2022 and 23. But handguns attribute to 59% of the crimes that happen in the United States. Rifles, the category that includes assault rifles that everybody like is against, right? That's 3%.
Yes, that was 2 years ago, though, right? So, like you said, it's went up
Yeah.
50% in the last 2.5 years. Not ARs specifically, but
Yeah.
we can sit here and say that number's increased.
Yeah, right. But
Right
what I'm
now,
saying
whether it's
is
5%, 10%,
that difference still exists, because really in any mass shooting and anything like that, it's always handguns because they need to conceal them.
right?
Like,
Exactly.
people aren't just walking around in the street with an AR because they'll be seen. And then what would happen? Somebody
Right.
who has a concealed weapons permit or whatever, like, that would be stopped. So, like, I don't know how I feel about that whole thing, right? I
Well,
mean,
and this is where
I
I
know
want to have a
people who have
conversation.
ARs and they're very safe with them, and they treat it just like any other gun that they have. And
What
when I
is
look
the Well, I was just going to ask, though, this is the conversation that I'm always curious about. And I'm glad to be talking to you because you're somebody who, like you said, I feel like you have a level head on this. You are definitely pro Second Amendment, as am I. You are a gun owner. I'm not, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't be. What is the point, though, to an AR rifle? What is the point to an automatic, semi-automatic rifle? What is the point outside of just killing humans? What is the point of having that type of machinery?
quite frankly, I think it's the thrill of being able to go out, and go into into a field or the woods and just blow something up. I mean, like, let's be real, right? I don't think it's so people can go out and slay human beings, because it's not happening. That's not happening. It's just not, right? So I think you could say, what's the point of having a dirt bike when you could just have a mountain bike? It's just a different kind of thrill, a different kind of ride, different kind of whatever, you know? I guess that's the most simplistic way of putting it to me, because I've shot ARs. They're fun to shoot. It's fun, you know? But, you know, I guess that's it. That's the only answer I have, you know?
Well, here's where I'm at with it. I just wanted to start there because you're right. Majority, I'm with you. I want to give me the stats on something, because I have biases, right? I've looked at things. I've
Sure.
been a teacher for the last 8 years, right? So I have biases. I will think that a problem occurs from something, but then when we actually look at the hard driven data, we're like, you know what? It's not what I thought. And the smartest thing I can do is to start tackling other areas and to remove myself from my bias. That is where I don't think people, they don't want to go there today. They have a narrative, they want to push it, they have an agenda, they want to push it, and they don't want to do a deep dive into what it is. I'm not ready to remove myself from AR rifles and whether or not they should exist because of the thrill of it. There was an example today, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but there was two congressmen or two congresspeople, they got attacked by someone with a baseball bat. And to me, they argue. I already know what the argument's going to be from friends. They're like, "See, there was a mad person there. They attacked someone, and the tool they used this time was a bat." And I would say, yes, you're absolutely correct. However, they're still alive to tell the story because they used the bat.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
that's a hyperbole there, but that's an extreme cause. But to me, it's like if you start looking at semi-automatic rifles, and when you take a deep dive into the statistics that are our mental health today by the youth, are we going to get to a point where the concealment factor of it, they don't even care, because ultimately at the end of it, and these mass shootings, they're looking to take their life at the end anyways. So
Yep.
to me, it's like I see and hear what you're saying. I just worry that we're going to get to an even darker place, and we're going to be able to do things a lot quicker because of the capacity of these types of machinery.
And I agree. I agree with that. And that's why we need to start looking at ourselves, right? As a society. And this is my point. So, I can say this, and it sounds so far like I'm all pro gun, right? But I'm also pro some restrictions, right? And common sense. Like, I believe that every person, this is my belief, there is no reason you shouldn't have your gun locked in your house. There's no reason. All right, so I have guns, right? So not going to say where it is. People will break in, they'll find out where but like, good luck getting my guns. They're in a locked case. And then once you get the locked case open, then there's a wire running through the trigger assemblies of all of them that have padlocks on it, right? And the ammunition is stored in a different place in the house. Like, that's responsible gun ownership, right?
Now, I want to stop you there real quick, Byron.
If everybody was like that, then we wouldn't have the problem. One of the biggest problems that there is stolen guns.
Right.
Right? That's where it all comes from. That's really where it comes from. So here's some statistics again, right? And these are not just bullshit statistics from some crazy stuff. You know, this is from the U.S. Department of Justice and different things, right? More than 1 million guns were stolen from private citizens and homes between 2017 and 2021. 1 million guns stolen, right? One gun is stolen from a car every 15 minutes. That's staggering. Cars parked at residences most commonly are the most common source of stolen guns. So that means if my car's sitting out in front of my house, somebody's gonna break in the middle of the night and steal my gun, right?
Right.
4.6 million children live in a house with loaded or unlocked guns. So, and I told you the other one, 80% of the mass shootings from kindergarten to 12 come from stolen guns from their own home. So I don't understand why, like, if we're going to have legislation, it should be that mandatory every gun's locked in a house.
Okay,
right?
That's where I want to stop you, though.
Kids, and there was a drinking rule, and then finally, I don't know, it was like in the 80s or something like that, where they finally put it on parents, and they're like, if you have a party at your house and somebody leaves your house and they kill somebody because they're drinking, it's your fault.
Right.
And boy, did that stop things fast.
Exactly. And that's where that's the type of legislation that I want us to get to right now.
Yes.
Because the issue is that, if I'm being honest with you, I feel like there's enough guns already. If you stopped right now manufacturing another gun in this country, there's enough already, right? That it really would.
People. It's a fact.
Well, every day they're making more. They're making more. So that's not a conversation. What can we do about what we have already? What can we do? How can we meet in the middle? The problem is that we already know about the exaggerations taking place on each side of social media and how they amplify everything. We know all this. What I'm trying to get us to figure out is, how can we meet in the middle on these, common sense laws when it comes to guns, if we can't even agree on how to solve some of the mental challenges that face our youth today. And I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking
100%.
about.
100%.
So forever, and it's still taking place right now. This is, to me, there's this dichotomy. We want mass shootings to stop. Would you agree that everybody you would think is on board with that? That shouldn't be divisive. Everybody, especially with our young children, we want that to stop. You agree with that?
100%.
100%. Now, because the tool being used is a weapon, is a gun, okay, for what we're talking about today. Nobody ever asks, well, we do. We ask, why does this young man, young girl choose to get to a place where they decide that they need this tool to commit such a heinous act? What's going on with that young man or young woman? Now, the issues that I see right now is the type of insensitive narrative by our leaders. And this is where I do show my colors a little bit. It's like, okay, for a long time, just saying that there was mental health, that was a stigma. We've seemed to got over that hurdle, but forever, that was a stigma that you couldn't even talk about. It was, especially with men. And it still is an issue with men, but it's better now than it was 10 years ago. And hopefully 10 years from now, it'd be better than it was today. So there's a more acceptable, I guess, nature within society that mental health issues do exist. But if you go 5-10 years ago, we were combating that. Now you take some of the issues that are taking place today, whether it be transgender or social issues or gay rights or whatever it is, that seemingly one side is in favor of certain liberties and the other side is against that. These things exist. These are real problems that are going to take place, whether or not you ban gender identity, or if you're in favor of it, you still have to handle what's happening to the kid at the root level. And I feel like forever, and now it's taking place again with, I saw a legislative congressperson debating whether or not we should be teaching social emotional intelligence at the school level, or if we should just be sticking to, the basic subjects, math, science, STEM type things. And to me, that is the number one place we should be teaching social emotional intelligence. And it starts in elementary. It starts with, how do you feel? How should you handle when you're angry? How should you handle when you're sad? These are things that should be taking place, not just in elementary, not just in middle school, but all the way through your high school career. But there seems to be pushback against that type of conversation taking place in our public schools. That's just one area. So my thing is that I feel like too often we're reactionary in this country, where we should be proactive with these types of issues taking place with our youth, because I've seen it on the forefront every single day. There's a reason a kid gets to a place before they are, quote unquote, unstable, or like you said, they're scared, they're angry. And it's just because they continue to get to that point without actually feeling like anybody cares for them, or that they're in a comfortable zone, whatever it is. They get to that point and then they make poor decisions. We as Congress doesn't even seem to agree on those types of things for our youth, let alone this big topic of gun control. So how can we get there? What do we need to do, Byron, today as a society to get us there?
I think that we need to take responsibility as parents and as people in neighborhoods and societies to look after everybody and not be so mad and divided all the time. Personally, and I know everybody's pointing to it, but I think the reason people are pointing to it, because it's absolutely true, is I think social media is absolutely destroying our youth.
Agreed.
Because it gives people a platform to be as loud as they possibly can, right? It could be 25 people who have a cause, and it could have the ring of 1,000,000, right? And then the way that social media works, like if I go, this, if I'm looking at green canoes on social media, the next thing I know, on every platform that I'm on, here's a green freaking canoe, right? Yeah. And I don't think that our legislators know how to regulate it. I don't think that people in society know how to deal with it, because everybody's just hooked on it, right? And there's this wonderful movie. It's called The Social Network. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Love it.
But I mean, if you want to know what social media is doing to people, watch that. It's scary as hell, and it's true. Like
it's the social dilemma. Just for everybody listening, it's
dilemma.
called
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, the network was the one with
We
social
did a
dilemma.
breakdown of that entire show on this show, just because I felt it was so crucial for people to get the statistics
totally
on
crucial. And you can't make me believe that if I'm searching for a green canoe and it comes up in every platform that I do over the next few days past that social media can't come up with an algorithm to troll kids who are displaying on social media that they're having issues, or grown adults. Because now, if you really look, everything is telegraphed through social media. When a big shooting happens, they're like, oh yeah, I knew Jimmy was going to do that. Oh yeah, like so-and-so was going to do that. Now it's even gotten to the point where people are live streaming themselves killing people. Like, this can't happen. To me, social media is the very first place that it needs to start, because that's what's dividing everybody. And as long as we're divided and we can't come together on it somehow, it's never going to get solved. It's just not. And I don't mean it like negative. I'm a pretty positive person, right? But
Yeah.
like these guys and the people controlling all this, there's just, it can be done. They're just not doing it.
Well, they're not doing it because it's Well, first of all, it's a capitalistic market, right? So they're
Right?
trying to get as many. Doesn't matter if you're 13, if you shouldn't be on social media. They just say, oh, that's a parent's issue. Parents need to
Yep.
figure out whether or not they're going to put their kids on there or not. Um, I had this conversation. I taught a leadership class for about 5 years. And one of the questions I continue to bring up, because I agree with you, I'm in full agreement on where the problems I believe are getting exasperated and continue to get exasperated with every generation and every year that comes
Yep.
after it. Because now we have our first ever generation of kids who were born with this technology
Into it.
already existing.
Yep. Yep.
So, with that being said, I used to pose this question. I'm like, what is the place of the education system? So, I went back in the mid to late 80s when education and schools started getting pushed to teach more about sexual health, sexual education. Now, there was a big pushback then. Should that even be discussed within a public school sector? Because this should be the job of the parents. Now,
Mm-hmm.
idealistically, I agree with you, right? In a perfect society, it's not the place of the school to have to teach that. If every parent did their job, this should be what they're doing. What ended up happening is that after you get another year and another year and another year of statistics of saying the STDs are up and HIV virus and all of these things, these astronomical numbers that we're climbing, it got to a place where it doesn't matter what we think should be taking place. We either need to employ these education systems and structures to start teaching this, or we're going to continue to have a huge pandemic on our hands here. So they did. And to great pushback from society, but eventually it got there. And the numbers trickled down. And just like anytime you educate society on something, you get a better result in the end. Now, here we are with these types of issues and whether or not they should be talked about. Critical race theory, social emotional intelligence, these types of issues, and whether or not it is the place of the school system to have these types of conversations. Idealistically, I say no, it's not. But realistically, I say yes, it is, because parents aren't doing their job. So where are we at with that, Byron? Because I'm with you. Social media, we can all agree that social media is the number one reason why these things are being amplified. But outside of our legislators clamping down and really putting real regulation on these types of, big tech companies that exist right now, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Google, Twitter, all that, without regulations to I forget the word that I'm looking for, but to a serious degree, these things are continue to happen. Doesn't matter if you manufacture more guns, you take away guns, they're going to continue to find ways to hurt people because they're enraged, scared, angered, and all those things. My question then becomes this. If we know the root cause for why these things are happening as a society, why don't we fix them? Why aren't we regulating them as a society? And the second part of that question, Byron, if you say it's because we're in a capitalistic society where they have the right to prostitute basically, 13, 14-year-old girls and boys and feed off of their decision making, do we as a society ultimately give a damn about our youth? Or is greed the ultimate thing?
I guess I would just say, how long will we as parents and as society continue to pass our responsibilities off on other people? You just said it. Why did the school take over some of those things? Because parents weren't doing their job. And then the parents complain about what's being taught in the school. Because then I could say to you the flip side. All right, it's being taught in the school, but what if the person in the school is a super left wing or a super right wing? Am I going to be getting, and then we complain about it? Well, don't complain about it. Teach your children, right? Teach your children. I was out in the neighborhood not too long ago, and I was walking down the street, and a kid had a BB gun, right? And he aimed it at me, right at me. And I stopped, and I'm like, I told him, It's dangerous. Don't aim a gun at somebody. That's not wrong, or that's not right, right? And I wonder what would have happened if mom were standing out there. Would I have been yelled at? Would
Right.
I have been reprimanded for saying something to her child? But I still would have done it. That's part of, as a society, as a parent, it's raising the people around you. We can't wait anymore. This is a speech that I gave at the end of the documentary when I got up and people were asking questions. We can't wait for government to make a change. We can't wait for a school to make a change or this person to make a change. We, as people, as human beings, as God-fearing Christian people, whether you're a Christian or it doesn't matter, as a good person, we should all be together taking care of this as a society, not wanting to do everything through politics, right? Because it's nothing's happening there. So how long are we going to continue to beat our heads against that wall when you can do it yourself, right? If you know your neighbor is having an issue over there and the police are there, or maybe not the police are there because then the police would know about it, but like you hear somebody beating somebody up over there, you hear gunshots or what, we should be on top of that, right? Not so much snitching, but every time after one of and I'm just keeping to shooting because there's so many things that we could deal with in society, but just the gun topic. Every time something happens, inevitably it's like, oh yeah, we knew Charlie was, he was crazy, or we knew that kid was something, or yeah, I read that on Facebook that he was, he said the day before that he was going to go shoot up the school. Then why the hell wasn't somebody all over that? Why wasn't somebody calling Jimmy's mom and saying, do you know what your kid's writing on Facebook? Like, these are things that we need to deal with as society, as human beings, and stop waiting for other people to do something about it. If it really means something to us, if you're really scared for your kid to go to school because they might get shot up, or you're really, you're opposed to this or that, then let's work together as a society to do the right thing and quit getting our feelings hurt so much over a position that a middle could clearly be found on.
So, Byron, so this is what I would say to you about all that, because I agree with you, but this whole thing feels to me idealistically. And I'm going to explain why I feel this way. Because right now, these stats exist, in my opinion, and maybe this is an oversimplification of it, and I don't want it to be, but it's just, it's not an umbrella, but it does fit. In my opinion, parents have been failing to do their job consistently. Yes. I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to sit up here and tell you how easy it is to be one. Not going to be. I understand how tiring it must be to work a full-time job and come home and still have to take care of, 3 kids, 4 kids, go to their, events, go to all these things, be on top of it. I get it. But you do have to try. If you're going to have a child, you do need to try to be a good parent consistently. That is your responsibility to that kid. I just looked up a statistic in 2022, almost 40% of our youth comes from one single family household. So now you take how 2 parents aren't necessarily doing their job, and now 1 parent is supposed to do the job of 2, and how challenging that must be.
Yep.
So I'm not blaming parents yet. I'm not there to say that this is the complete fault of all parents, but I'm getting closer to that because what I'm saying to you is these stats exist in 2023. And it would be great if parents would just start doing their job and we could have this mentality of it takes a village to raise our kids like we used to have. Now we kind of stranger danger more than ever before. I'm saying to you, realistically, we need some type of intervention before we can get back to a place of that's idealistically. Because right now, just saying this is what we need, I'm I don't know that we're going to get there, because there's a
100%.
reason we're here anyways, because parents haven't been doing their job.
Yep.
They're not just going to all of a sudden get it and be like, I need to do my job. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So realistically, what are some of the things that you think we can do, whether it be legislators, whether it be giving our communities more power within the community to have the justice of what their neighbor is doing or whatnot? Where's something ground roots that we can actually do that's tangible, that we can touch and start making real changes? Because I think idealistically, I'm with you. I'm on board. I just don't think we're there.
I mean, I think that we have a better chance. I know you say it's idealistically. Raising children and policing people, as a society. I believe that there's a way better chance in that than trying to get anything done through any type of politics.
Okay.
I just believe that there's far too much money in it. Here's a great example. School shooting, right? When the first school shooting happened, when it happened with little kids, Sandy Hook,
yeah.
right? Little kids, and nothing happened. It's like, it's never going to happen. And you know what's happened every time that there's a big school shooting, one that makes national news? Sales of guns rise tremendously. Boom. Because because of the maybe threat that they're going to limit guns. So everybody runs out. So really, it's a windfall for the gun industry every time there's a shooting, a televised shooting. I don't know. I know that this sounds so negative, but as I was doing this documentary, I told my wife, I came to this realization about halfway through. I said, if we were able to remove all guns from the face of the earth, just remove them, wave our hands and they're gone, what would happen? People would fight with swords. And if you waved your hands and all the swords went away, people would fight with sticks and rocks. There's something inherent about that. I just don't know at this point. I don't know what we're really going to do. That's the sad part. I spent 2 years working on this project, and people ask me the inevitable question. All I can really come up with is we really need to be able to secure our guns. I think every gun should have a trigger lock on it. There's no excuse not to have it. And people say, well, if there's somebody in my house, I can't get the trigger lock off fast enough. Well, I have my phone has the technology that I can put my thumbprint on it and it instantly unlocks. Why can't they make a trigger release that's thumbprintable? And then when you stick your finger on it, just pushes through and then you have access to your gun. It's 2 seconds, right?
That doesn't exist. That already doesn't exist, Byron? Not
that I'm aware of.
Wow.
It might.
I'm blown away by that, because I would feel like that should have been something that already comes about. Like,
think about those numbers that I was talking about with the stolen guns. 1 million guns stolen, and stolen out of cars and stolen out of houses. And 80% of the shootings that are happening are stolen from their own house. All that would go away. People could steal your gun all day long, but if they can't unlock it, then it's useless. That's the number one thing to me. That's the number one thing. And then as a society, we just got to be better. We just need to be better people, and watch our kids and watch what they're watching and not be offended if somebody says, hey, your little Jimmy, he's been talking about bringing guns to school, and instead of being angry about it, you check it out. Because when I grew up, if somebody told my dad that, I'd have got an ass whooping. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a difference. I was having this conversation a few months back with some other teachers about, I'm only 36, but I'm also part of a generation of kids who grew up without cell phones and the internet. And I was probably the last generation of kids that grew up with that. And then by the time I hit high school, cell phones had made their appearance, in 2000, 2001. We weren't texting yet until I got to college. Social media really didn't come out until about the second or third year into college. So like my generation was the last of the Mohicans basically to know what it was like without social media. And then we also were the first kind of guinea pig that used it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we know a world. So I always have this conversation with my students. I tell them, I said, if I could go back in an instant, I would get rid of this technology. I've seen both sides of it. I would get rid of it in a heartbeat because I've seen the detrimental effects that it's had to our society as a whole,
And it's
not just
across the
kids.
board. It's across the board. Like I told you before we started recording, like I listened to your thing about like, the boys who are like in their 20s and they're not,
Not having sex.
they're not having sex anymore because they
Yeah.
don't know how to talk to girls. They're not
Yeah.
going outside. They're not meeting people. They're not socializing. They're not doing anything except going like this on their phone. And I feel like an old fart by going, because that's always what the old people do. And the young people say, you don't understand. But I've sat in restaurants and watched a group of 4 people not having a conversation, all on their phones and talking. You can't tell me that that doesn't have an effect on how their brains, young adolescents' brains are developing and socializing, and they don't know how to deal with problems, and they don't know how to talk things through, and they don't know how to deal with conflict. And then so how easy is it? Oh, my dad has a gun over there. It's not locked. I'm pissed at so-and-so at school. Let's take care of this problem. And I don't care if I die because I want to commit suicide anyway. Right?
Right.
Isn't that kind of where we are in society right now with kids? Like, I feel so bad for them.
Yeah, I do too. No, I do too. It's
I don't know. I'm probably just a 56-year-old crazy person. I'm just trying to do something, right?
no, and
Just
I respect
trying to
that.
because a conversation like this, everybody will be mad at me. Neither side will like it. There's this thing, um, there's this thing that I don't know if you remember it. I mean, you might remember this. You were a judge of the movie, right?
Yes.
So at the end, I had some lines, and it was at the very end of the film, and it said, after the screening of this film, several white suburban church members believed that the film targeted their Second Amendment rights.
Right.
Right. The next line was, some black activist groups were upset because they thought it to be too sympathetic towards the police. It's Black Lives Matter people. Certain police administrators were not supportive of the film because it made the police look ineffectual, they said, right? That wasn't it at all. Numerous local and state politicians argued that it may undermine their funding and gun control policies, and that would make them look bad. The city of Detroit, the residents said that Detroit was depicted in its worst light because we were showing the kids, doing stuff in Detroit. So what it really comes down to is if a movie like this that takes the middle has that many people, who's left to protect our kids from gun violence? Everybody's just digging in on their own personal agenda. And what really matters, the one commodity that we have in the United States, the only thing worth anything is our children. And nobody seems to give a damn.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you and you don't have to answer this. The narrative of American politics would be, trying to ask it in a kosher way, but I'm just going to ask the question.
Just go.
Don't you, when it comes to, I don't want to use the term gun control because that is what the American politics, it becomes the conversation about gun control. Is it possible to have a conversation about this without it becoming gun control? Because I feel like it's not, because it doesn't matter if the left presents it in any matter where there would be any small number of gun reform at all. It does get turned into this conversation about it's a slippery slope. If you give them this right, then they take this right, and then they take this right. Is it possible to have, like you said, we're not here for our legislators because they're not going to get it done. Is it possible to have any conversation at the table with our American legislators without having that gun control conversation? Like, is there anything left that could be, what's the word I'm looking for when everybody's together on it? Is there any topics left? Because is everything that we debate all the fringe non-negotiables now that everything that we could have voted on and agreed upon has been voted on and agreed upon, and everything else now in 2023 American politics is all the fringe non-negotiables for our people. Is that where we are right now? And
I
it
feel
is
like it's not just in American politics, but it's across the board. I think that
okay.
everybody is so divided and so in their camps that they can't seem to come out of it. And I think social media holds us there like a jail, right? And feeds us only the information that we want to hear, and nobody's willing to just go like this and listen to the other side. You know what the definition of a great negotiation is?
Yeah,
When
listen.
neither side is happy. That's the perfect negotiation, because that means nobody really got what they wanted, but there was a middle that was found.
Right. Right.
And they sat and shook hands on it. That's where we need to be again today. And I fear I sound like an old person, but I don't really care. I mean, in politics, if we're talking about politics, when I was younger, you could sit down to a family dinner, and some people might be Republicans and some of them might be Democrats, and you could have a conversation about politics, and you might disagree, but you were still a family, and you laughed about it, and you went home, and everybody was cool. Now we're to the point where people won't even go over to their own house, to somebody's house for Thanksgiving, their own family, because that person might be a Trump person, or that person is a Biden person, or that person is a so-and-so person. Like, it's bullshit. Like, we need to
Bullshit.
get past all that, right? We just have to get past by that, or we're doomed as a society.
I would tell my students, I would say 10, 15 years ago or 15, 20 years ago, you would, if you wanted to know Uncle Joe's opinion on Biden or Trump, you would have had to call him up and say, hey, Uncle Joe, what's your opinion on Biden or Trump? And nobody would ever do that because it would be rude for you to just call a family member that you haven't spoken to in a while and just jump to that. So you wouldn't do it. What would happen is it would have to happen in an organic route, and therefore you wouldn't know everybody's opinions about everything or everyone all the damn time. Now, because of social media, everybody thinks they need to share their opinions about everybody and everything all the damn time. And now all I see as a nephew of Uncle Joe is how Uncle Joe is always negative about something I love or something like that. And then therefore there's this disdain between two men now that shouldn't exist, that does exist simply because this platform exists. And instead of regulating myself and saying, okay, wait a minute, this is just what he's doing in this platform. He's still good, loving Uncle Joe, and 99% of our conversations and daily interactions don't have anything to do with politics. I can't do that. What happens is we dive into the 1% of us and we get angry and we react poorly. And I think we've kind of lost our way a little bit. These things are supposed to be tools. They're not supposed to use us. And The Social Dilemma did a really good job of talking about how we're being manipulated now and we're allowing it to take place rather than just using it as a tool.
If people haven't seen that film, they really need to see that film, because, and I'll be honest, I was a victim of it. I was
too. Sure.
I got into, like, there was a time in politics not too long ago, and I'm not even going to which sides or whatever, but it became so divisive. Like, I used to be on Facebook, and I used to do that. I used to have thousands of people who followed me because I used to travel all over the world with National Geographic and Discovery and do all that. And it got to the point where I'd post something and get like 3 people, and people hated me, and I lost friends and this and that. And it was just my opinion.
Right.
And I think also, people, the most opinion, this is just an opinion, I think the most opinionated people, the ones who refuse to come off their stance, have never left their little area, their village. Right. They have a myopic view of what everything is, but they've never left, their little town. They've never left Michigan. Right. They've never left whatever state that it is, or their town, or whatever. And the people who have the best outlook and can kind of take everything in and feel it and understand both sides, I think, are the people who've been around the world, who've been around the country, who've done stuff, and I believe, I mean, I was lucky enough. There's this saying I like to say, I've slept on the floors with peasants and I've dined with kings. And it's true. I've spent time in Ethiopia sleeping on dirt floors with those people. And they're some of the happiest people I ever met, and I've dined with kings and some of the most rotten people I've ever met, right? I've ice road truckers I worked on. I've been a trucker. I've been a tuna fisherman. I've been a coal miner. I've been an oil driller. I've done all those jobs because of my career and the stories that I used to tell, right? I really truly do understand all sides of it. I get it why people don't want their guns taken away, or why people think that there shouldn't be AR 15s or whatever. Like I see it all. So what are we going to do about it? That's
Right.
what I'm going to leave this with. What are we as a society going to do about it, other than looking to somebody else to do something about it? Because looking to somebody else has never solved anything.
No, it doesn't. And I think this is a good place to kind of wrap this up. Just to kind of give you my final thoughts on something similar to what you just said. I was a administrator during COVID time. I was an athletic director and a dean of students. So I was in charge of all athletics and things that were impacted by COVID. And I was in charge of all students and basically their well-being, and were we going to give them grades? Were we not? Were we going to hold them to their grades? Were we not? And all these things. And there was a lot of debate. And all I asked by my superiors was, the time for debate has come and gone. We need to make a decision now, because I believe as leadership, you have to make a decision. So I'm all for, as somebody who I'm an empath too. I'm well-traveled. I tend to kind of look at everybody's sides, and I see valid points from everybody's side. Even if I have my own biases that lean me one way or the other, I can genuinely listen to what you have to say. But there's a time and a place for that, and there's also a time to make a decision. So all the time, I would tell my superiors, we need to make a decision. So finally a decision was made. And I said, we're going to fail with this decision or we're going to succeed. But if we fail, we didn't really fail, because now we know that approach doesn't work. Now we need to try something different. I'm to the point now where I don't care if it's an extreme one way or the other. We need to try something as a society when it comes to what's happening with our youth, what's happening with the gun conversation, what's happening with it. And it might be something that goes against what I believe in. You know what I mean? Because I'm willing to try. Heck, you could open up Second Amendment to everybody, all ages. To me, let's see it. Let's see if it works. Let's give the Republicans 100% of what they want. Let's see if it works. Because if it does, I would say I'm wrong, and that worked. Let's go the opposite route. Let's confiscate everything like they did in Australia in 96 and the gun ban that they had there, and see if that worked. Because for them, that society, that culture, that worked. Let's see if these things work. Now, there's byproducts of all of these decisions, right? Should we ban social media on all kids 16 years of age and under, or 15 years of age and under? Should we ban it? And they shouldn't be allowed to have it. And, we kind of take them to the dark corners of the world where they have to be hiding in places with fake names and stuff like that. Yep. It's going to give us a huge slew of new problems to deal with. But are we killing each other at astronomical rates? I hope not. We're going to try to solve one problem, but I'm at the point where we need to make a decision, because like these young kids today, they're tired of the thoughts and prayers. They're tired of listening to adults say things like that.
100%.
They just want some semblance of change. I'm saying just try something, because right now we're doing nothing. Byron, man.
Can I say one thing? Just one thing that I'd like to say.
I'll let you have final word. Go ahead.
I'm involved with a church. I go to a downtown church in Detroit, mostly black. The pastor of the church is named Pastor Barry Randolph. About 15 years ago, he started a march because he was tired of doing funerals for kids who were killed in the inner city. And it was called the Silence the Violence March. It started with like 20 people. So here we are on the 16th anniversary. It's happening June 17th in Detroit, right at the mouth of Belle Isle, at a church called the Church of the Messiah. There's going to be over 2,000 people there. it keeps growing and growing and growing. There's going to be legislators there from both sides of the aisle, because this is how Barry feels too. We're not going to fix anything going one side or the other. People got to meet, right? So if you have, it doesn't matter what side you are on. If you want to come and you want to support people whose children have actually been taken from these families, because what it is, it's an honor. It's in honor of the children who have been killed. And all the parents who lost their kids bring signs with the child's picture, and they march down the streets. It's super powerful. Now that march, like I said, it's grown to 2,000 people. And there's going to be mere marches around the state, not just in Detroit. So maybe you can find one in your area. And it's spread into other states now too. So this is a man who's making a difference. And if you'd like to come and join everybody in a march, it's June 17th at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's a non-side march. Doesn't matter whether you're for gun control, doesn't matter whether you're a gun owner, it doesn't matter. It's good to be a part of somebody trying to do something, as you said.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So,
well, and you've done your part.
Silence the violence. Silence the violence march.
Silence the violence. And you've done your part. I'm sure you'll continue to do your part. But just tell people where they can see this awesome documentary. I've seen it, everybody. It is awesome. It's really cool because, like he says, it's not, you're not going to get a gun control conversation out of this. You're going to get alarming stats when it comes to what's happening with our youth. And it's not shying away from the gun conversation. It's just saying that there's something deeper taking place within these communities that are causing our kids to reach for these types of tools because they're quick fixes in their eyes to a problem, when in reality, it's not a fix at all. Where can they see Kiss the Babies? Where can they catch it?
So you can go to my website, and it's very simple. It's byrongoggin.com. It's spelled BYRONGOGGIN.com. And there's a tab there that says Kiss the Babies. You'll see a bunch of stuff. You'll see some awards that it's won. You'll see a trailer for it. And at the bottom, it's going to say, you need a password. So it's because of a thing that we're doing. I'm not really allowed to release it to the public totally because it's a long story. So I'll give you the password. It's just KTB for Kiss the Babies, all caps.
All caps.
And if it doesn't come up for some reason, shoot me an email and I'll get it to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Byron, man, I appreciate it.
I hope everybody who involved, it wasn't many on the project. There was only like 6 of us. It was just a labor of love, and we did it because we thought the topic really needed to be talked about, and I think you'll like it. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Well,
I got to tell you, the thing that kind of took it to the next level for me was right away when, because the timing of the documentary, even though I posed the question that maybe it's too late, I don't agree with that question. I was just posing the question. I just love seeing Charlie a part of that. I was like, oh my God, this is going to go to that next level, because I was a fan of him, even though I tend to watch more Toledo news because I'm here in the Adrian area. Anytime he was on TV at Fox 2 News Detroit, I was like, what is he doing? Because I got that sense that he cares about his community at large. Left, right, doesn't matter. He's going to do the right thing. So try to get to the answers. So
yeah, and this film is all of ours. It's not my film. Like, Charlie was the one who started the whole thing, and if it wasn't for, he found the people and he did all this, and he's a genius with it all. And then I just brought it together through the editing, and I think it's a great collaboration, and I'm very proud to work with him on it.
Well, I'll tell you what, stay online here with me after I wrap this up. I gotta ask you a couple questions off the air. But for everybody, Kiss the Babies, I will attach all of the information that you need to know on all of the social media that I'm going to, market this and advertise this. That way you guys can get information to it. The password is KTB, all capitalized. And then I'll tag any of Byron's ways of getting in touch with him as well. That way, if you guys, if you want to reach out to him, give him some feedback on not just this conversation that we had here today, but the documentary, if you do indeed check it out, you can do so. Otherwise, Follow, like, subscribe, do everything you can for the show. Just kind of push it where you think it needs to be and help us grow. And I will see you guys on down the road. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback.